Okay, we have a very special guest on the North Alabama School for Organizers uh, tonight, Nancy Hollander. Nancy is an international lawyer who is in partnership with Freeman Boyd, Hollander, Goldberg, Uris, and Ward out of Albuquerque. Nancy was once an activist in the Uptown Chicago community and co-author of Uptown Poor Whites in Chicago. Um, she has done a lot of activism and organizing, and she also worked with Chelsea Manning and helping to get Chelsea Manning freed, and also with Mohamedou. Okay,
Mohamedou Slahis.
Sabaki. Okay, he was unjustly detained at the Guantanamo Bay military detention, and she also worked to get him out. And he kept a diary, and which is now a book, and there is a documentary, correct? Which is
a film.
A film, okay. But very pleased to have you here and see you again. You and I did some work organizing together years ago. I was 17 years old, I think, when I met you.
I was only a couple years older, so.
I'm sorry. What?
I was only a couple years older.
Yes, we were all young, and we were out there, trying to do organizing on the street. And perhaps you could tell us a little bit about your activism and what you did there. I thought you were doing a story or something for Life magazine or something. Someone told me, but you weren't.
Me now?
No, back then.
No. I came to Chicago to work with Join, Jobs or Income Now. That's why I moved there to become a community organizer. And I'd been organizing in Cleveland the summer before, organizing welfare mothers, and then moved to Chicago. And then we got this contract to write a book. And so we did both of those things. I'd just like to say that I don't think I ever stopped being an activist. When people ask me, I say, I've been fighting the government since I first got arrested when I was 17 years old. It's just that now every once in a while I get paid for it. It's really the only difference. But one of the things we did in those days, which you reminded me of a few minutes ago, is follow police paddy wagons, because in Chicago, the paddy wagons would roam around and pick people up when they arrested them. They had them right there on the street. And Ralph and Ralph, brother Ralph had a Brownie camera around his neck, and I had my Nikon. So the theory was that if I took a picture of something to the cops or something, I would then hand him the Nikon, take the Brownie really fast, he'd run away, and if the cops decided to smash my camera, they'd have the Brownie to smash and not the Nikon. And we saw all kinds of things. We saw the cop shoot a guy one night. We saw a lot of bad stuff. But I hope that we stopped some things too.
Yeah.
But the cops in those days, maybe it's not any different now, I suppose. I just read that 400 journalists have complained about police gassing them, etc., in this country on the recent protests. And, we didn't have anything that marked us as press. We just were local people taking photos. We did a lot of things. We went to the court with people. We organized welfare mothers. I had a lead poisoning project. So it's always annoyed me when people say, oh, look, we've just discovered lead poisoning in Flint. Well, we knew there was a lead poisoning problem in Uptown because the kids would eat the paint off the walls, and it was lead-based paint. And it tasted good. It's kind of sweet. And they would chew it because it peeled, because nothing was ever fixed. And I had a whole program with the local doctors there where I'd collect these urine samples from these little babies, take them to the hospital, and then if they were positive, go back and grab the kids and take them to the hospital. We had all kinds of different things we did in that community. Also worked with a filmmaker named Peter Kuttner, working with the Panthers, Black Panthers, the Breakfast for Children program, which became a film that Peter finished. And just, you know, a lot of stuff.
Yeah. And were you around during the police march on the police station?
Yes.
Okay. That's when we were called the Goodfellows at that point, I guess. Yeah.
Right when it happened, right.
Yeah. And that's kind of when all hell broke loose after that, too.
Well, we also took over the seminary, McCormick Seminary.
Yes.
Young Lords.
Yes.
And I was trying to man the switchboard, but I didn't know how to do it. So it was one of those old switchboards where you pull the things in and somebody would call, and I'd say, who was it? Manuel Ramos. It was Manuel Ramos.
Yes.
Manuel Ramos Memorial Center. Can I help you? And this person on the other end would say, I'm trying to reach the library. And I'd say, well, I got you, but I have no idea how to connect you to anything else. So
yeah,
good luck.
Yeah, that's when we went in and chained the doors, and you know, and would not let, you know, anyone in. So that was quite an experience.
For a long time. We were there maybe several days or something.
Yeah, until the demands were met. Finally, we could get out of there. But yeah, and the young, you know, it was quite an experience in Uptown, because you talk about brutality at that time. Now, it was brutal. It was very brutal in Uptown. It was you know, an everyday occurrence too. I know that some of the Black communities and brown communities, you know, had it tough, probably tougher than we did. But that's one of the things that brought us together into the Rainbow Coalition, was because of that brutality.
Yeah. I remember seeing what I recall as tanks. I'm sure they weren't tanks, but during the riots in 67, 68, I think it was 68, when after Martin Luther King was killed.
Oh,
and, coming down Lakeshore Drive, and I could see them. And then if I looked the other way, I could see the fires burning. And Tom, my husband at the time, Tom Malier, I was sent home from work that day. I was working at as a photographer at the South Side, and I was sent home. Everyone was sent home, told, go home and lock your doors. And I called the bar down the street. I don't remember the name of that bar, but I was sure that's where he was. And I said, you know, I think you should come home. And he said, well, I will, but I got to walk Charlie to the subway. So Charlie was a Black guy, and he was there in that neighborhood, which was not a good place to be that evening.
No.
So Tommy walked him to the subway and made sure he got on the subway and out of the neighborhood, and then came back.
Yeah. And when did you start becoming a lawyer?
That was a long time later. We went to Cincinnati. I was organizing there. I worked in as a riveter for a while, and then went back to Chicago, and then went to Belleville, and then I moved to Albuquerque, and I became the director of the New Mexico Civil Liberties Union, and I did that until the day I started law school in 1974.
Yeah. Was that when you went to what'd you say, Cincinnati?
Mm-hmm.
Was that with some of the other joint people to set up an organization?
Well, it was, we didn't try to set up an organization. We were just trying to organize in the white community again.
Uh-huh.
It was Bob Lawson, Diane Fager, Tom Malier, and just the four of us. And we each worked in different places. And we were not very successful. I mean, it was just a hard place. And then we came back to Chicago.
Okay. And did you work on the Peggy Terry Cleaver campaign?
Not really. I mean, I was aware of it, but I don't think I actively worked on it, not that I can recall.
Yeah. And of course, you know, the rest is history. You know, the neighborhood, you know, became gentrified. The college came in, and you know, everybody had to move. and then of course, with Fred Hampton's murder, a lot of us that were around at that time also had to leave,
Yeah,
so
I
that,
was there for his murder, Fred Hampton's murder, because Tom, again, he was a big guy, as you recall,
yeah,
and
yeah,
he
Tom,
was in charge of security for about 3 days. The cops weren't there; they just left the place, and
yeah,
so we just ran groups of people through, showing them where all the bullets were, where the blood was, where the bed was. All of a sudden the cops finally realized we were all there and made us leave. But Tom and I went, and he was in charge of making sure, nobody was
yeah,
coming in with guns, basically.
yeah, yeah. And I remember, I remember Tom very well, and I remember we were at a anti-war demonstration downtown Chicago, and he was arrested, and they had his picture on the front page of the newspaper, except they had the last name wrong. They had Tom Lamar, and so about a month later, he got a draft notice with that name, you know, and so that's how he got out of the draft, actually.
Yeah, I still have his draft board file, which is pretty funny, all the different
Yeah,
things I told him, because he was actually on parole from
yeah,
California when he came to Chicago. And the first time they sent him down to St. Louis, or they said they were going to go down to St. Louis to the draft board, and he said, well, I'm not allowed to leave the state. And they said, well, it's okay. He said, no, it's not. You have to get permission from, and that, took care of that one. Every one he got,
yeah,
finally, he said, he wrote them a letter that said, I'm, not capable of killing women and children, bombing
yeah.
villages. And at that point, he became 4F. That was the end.
Okay. Well, yeah, that's great. Yeah, he was a tough guy.
He
He
was
was
a
a
colorful
biker type.
character. He was a
Huh?
biker. He was a biker. He was a
Yeah,
good guy. He just had
yeah,
a drinking problem, but otherwise, he was a good guy.
yeah. We had to release somehow, didn't we? Well, that's great. I wanted to um, ask you a little bit about, Kelsey Manning and how you got involved in that. Um,
Well, I actually was originally contacted when she first got arrested, and talked to her detailed counsel in Kuwait, talked to someone about, putting a team together. I said I would do that for the trial. But then, told them what it would cost. Then I never heard anything again. And they hired a military lawyer. And after she was convicted, I got a letter from her saying that she wanted me to do her appeal. And my law partner, Vince Ward, and I went to Leavenworth, not the federal prison Leavenworth, the one on the Leavenworth base, the military disciplinary barracks, and met with her, and we did her appeal. And we lost the appeal, but we won the clemency, which was far more important because we got her out. I didn't represent her in the grand jury, although I talked to her and met with her and talked to her lawyer, but she's out again now, finally.
yeah. How long of a process was that for
Yeah.
you working with her?
A few years.
Yeah.
Because it was the longest record in military history, 139 volumes, each one about 300 pages. And because I was doing her appeal and had to make sure that I didn't miss any issues or any ineffective assistance or anything, I had to read every line of it. And it took a long time. We put it all onto a program called Case Map. I made notebooks. We wrote, and she had a very fine military lawyer, and Dave Hammond. And he and Vince and I worked. We had part of the brief was classified, and the Army they didn't know how to deal with a classified brief, and we had to come up with all this. It was sort of a nightmare, but
Yeah.
And we knew once we won the clemency that we would lose the appeal because her sentence was reduced to 7 years. And at trial, her lawyer had argued for 10 years. So, you know, what was she going to get by appealing? I mean, she would have, we had some good issues, but they weren't interested.
Yeah. Yeah. Hmm.
And she got out. I was with her the day she got out in Kansas. There is a documentary about her. It's called XY Chelsea, and it's on Showtime. And it's a good little documentary. It's about 90 minutes, but it starts with the day we got her out because we were wearing flak jackets. You know, Kansas is an open carry state, and everyone was a little nervous that somebody there were a lot of people who thought she was a traitor, and so we were all concerned. We were also concerned that Trump would find a way to not let her out. So
Yeah.
she was supposed to get out. 2 minutes after midnight, we were in that prison, and we had security. We had this security firm from LA with us, and Chase Strangio and I went in and got her, and we put on our flak jackets and drove back and went right up to an airplane they had there and flew to some place in New York that I never have figured out where we were, but we were in some safe house for about 4 days.
Oh, really? Yeah.
And then she left her.
Is that something that your firm usually does? Works in those areas of justice?
Military law?
Yeah.
No, I'd never done a military case before except Guantanamo, but those are different. But Vince was a JAG officer. He was a military officer in the Navy.
Mm-hmm.
And so he knew what we needed to do, basically. And it's not that different. I mean, there are things that are different from federal law, but it's not that hard to figure out. And now, as a result of that, people in my firm have done a number of other military cases. Guantanamo is a whole different thing. That's not really military law. That's made up cases. I mean, they literally made it up.
Yeah. And were you ever harassed?
Harassed?
Were you ever harassed or anything by the military? Or anything like that?
No. In fact, you know, when they're not killing you, they're really very polite. They really are. They're trained to be polite, to be service-oriented. I got on a flight to go to Guantanamo one night, come back, I forget which, but it was a C-130, and they're just dreadful airplanes. You sit sideways, and they're cold. And I don't know if any of you have ever been in the military, but you put on these ear pieces, and you're leaning up against the other person on these. Anyway, it's horrible. But I had saved a place for one of my military counsel, and I got in, and I had a place saved for him, because there are a couple places where there were some poles, and you could lean against the pole. And this other guy came, and he said, anyone sitting there? And I said, yeah, Captain Cassidy is sitting there. He said, well, you can't reserve a seat. I said, well, I did. And he said, well, that's wrong. You shouldn't do that. And he goes storming off. And Chris came, and I said, you know, that guy was really pissed at me. He said, what do you mean he was pissed at you? He is, you know, that was impolite. And he went off and told him, you know, what do you mean not being polite to Miss Holland? But they are. They've always been. We have military counsel on, not on Mohamedou's case, but on my death penalty case, the guy who's still there, and they're fabulous lawyers, fabulous. You know, 17 Sailor, he's charged with blowing up the USS Cole, if anyone remembers that case. Aden, Yemen, and he's charged with being the mastermind, the people who blew it up. But so 17 sailors died, and we've always had Navy officers on our defense team. And they're just as good, solid defense lawyers as you would want.
Okay. Very professional, huh?
Very professional.
Yeah. can you tell us a little bit what your conversations were like with Chelsea Manning? And just,
Uh, Not really, because they're
I
all,
love to talk to her, but
um, no, I mean, we talked a lot. We spent a lot of time together. We spent time together in Leavenworth. They made us a secure room in a basement of buildings there, and we spent time there. But Vince and I drove to Leavenworth. I can't tell you how many times to meet with her.
yeah.
She got out.
Now, international lawyer, you get to travel around the world and do a lot of. I talked to you one time. You were in Paris or somewhere. I don't know, some country. And then I try to get you to be in another country somewhere else. What are those cases?
Well, a lot of it's been teaching. I've taught all over the world, Russia, Vietnam, all over Europe. But I also represented a man named Michael McKinley, and he was charged with directing terrorism. He was a member of the real IRA. There's lots of different IRAs, the provisional IRA, the IRA. He was the real IRA. He was the quartermaster, allegedly. And although I don't think it's really alleged anymore, it is. Quartermaster is the person in charge of the guns. And that was a big deal in Northern Ireland. But represented him in Dublin. I couldn't practice in Dublin, but I was a consultant to his defense solicitor and to his barristers, and that case went on for several years. And it was a terrific case, a terrific guy. Again, if you're on his side and not the person whose knees he's going to shoot out. It's always very polite to me. I don't know how many of you remember Bobby Sands. Anybody remember Bobby Sands? You're probably old enough to remember Bobby Sands, right? He was the first of the hunger strikers to die in early 70s, wasn't it, I think? Well, Michael was married to Bobby's sister. So they were part of the Irish Revolutionary War. And I represent Ibrahim al-Nasri, as I mentioned, the USS Cole. We have 3 current cases, international cases. One is, what's that noise? Do you hear a noise? You don't hear it? Am I the only one who hears it? Okay. We won 2 cases for him in the European Human Rights and got 200,000 euros to his family in Saudi Arabia. And he, against countries, the names of which are still classified, so I can't tell you what they are. And see, there's a slight hum in the, David just wrote something. You see, or Donald, do you see that? There's a slight.
I hear it too. It sounds like a fan or something in the background.
I wonder if it's mine. Hold on a second. If I mute, does it go away?
No, it's still there even with you're muted. Yeah, it sounds like it's somebody's air conditioner or something.
Yeah, I thought it might be mine, but it isn't.
I'm wondering if it's my fan in my laptop, because it's going.
Yeah, it could be. In any event, we won 2. We're about to go to a 3rd country. We have a petition in England, and we have this case in front of the International Criminal Court. He was tortured in what are known as the CIA black sites. Very badly tortured in ways that you really can't imagine. But just the public parts are horrendous. I mean, waterboarding was the least of what they did to him. The Senate Armed Services Committee report, the part of it that's public, details what happened to him, or at least some of what happened to him. but that's why we brought those cases. And his case is pending in Guantanamo. He's indicted. They don't call it indicted, but charges were referred in 2008, and they haven't gone to trial yet. So that case will go on for a long time. But I've been, just for him, I've been to England, France, Yemen, Saudi, maybe some other places, Amsterdam, and I represented the Holy Land Foundation was the largest Muslim charity in America, for a material support for terrorism case for feeding the wrong children, basically. They never were accused of or convicted of a single violent act, but they fed children. That's all they did. And my client's in jail for 65 years. So I went to Palestine a number of times for that case. Gaza, the West Bank, everywhere. So yeah, I mean, I like to travel.
Yeah, you're all over the place. But
except for now.
Yeah, you got to stay put for now, don't you?
But since Mohamedou got out, I haven't been to Guantanamo again because it's a long story, but I got into a little bit of a tiff, rather a big tiff with the CIA about him, and they won't let me see him anymore. So for me, that's kind of a blessing because I don't have to go to Guantanamo. Mohamedou was never charged with any crime. Tortured, the worst treated in Guantanamo. He wasn't in the black sites. He was in Jordan before he went to Guantanamo, but never charged. And the man who was supposed to prosecute him, a guy named Colonel Stuart Couch, right-wing, conservative, Southern guy from South Carolina, Marine, was ready to give him the death penalty, goes to Guantanamo, and this is all public. And first thing that happened when he went down there is he's a very straight-laced guy, right? Marine, very straight dude, crew cut, the whole thing. He goes down there and he hears this loud music, and he's pissed off. Like some serviceman is playing some kind of loud music, and it's drowning pool. Let the bodies hit the floor, which maybe, what, does anyone know drowning pool? Yeah, right, they do. And it's just a horrible song. And that's what they use to torture these guys. So he goes and he sees this prisoner curled up and pulling his hair out, strobe lights going and this loud music. And he's standing there, and a serviceman comes up and he says, "Sir, I'm sorry, you're not allowed to be here." I said, "What's going on here? You don't treat prisoners like that. I'm a Marine. I was trained. We have the Geneva Convention. We have the Convention Against Torture. What is going on?" And that wasn't Mohamedou, but it was his first clue that there was a problem. And then when he finally got Mohamedou's interrogation logs, he saw that he had denied everything until they started torturing him. And then all of a sudden he said yes to everything, made up all kinds of stuff. They said to him, "You were going to blow up the tower in Toronto." He said, "Oh yeah." He had no idea if there was a tower in Toronto. But Stu refused to prosecute him. And after that, he never was prosecuted. Stewart's actually in the movie, and Benedict Cumberbatch, if you know who he is, he's a British actor. He's playing Stuart Couch.
Yeah. No. Is that out now?
Oscar is playing me, which is like the most exciting thing that's ever happened in my life.
Here you go. They've always said that if they do a Young Patriot movie, I want, somebody like Tom Hanks or somebody playing me. But
oh yeah, the nice guy, right? Tom
yeah, the nice guy. But yeah, now let's. I read where, when you were at Guantanamo, that the guards said that the lawyers were Jews or homosexuals.
Oh yeah, well the first time we went to see Mohamedou, which was my first day in Guantanamo, 2005, he said, they're gonna come in as soon as you leave and interrogate me. And I said, well, they can't do that. He said, well, it's easy for you to say you're leaving. And sure enough, they came in and they said, tell us everything you told your lawyers. I said, I don't think I'm supposed to do that. And they said, well, they don't really care about you because they're Jews, your lawyers. Yeah. Now, it turns out I'm barely a Jew. I mean, like a DNA Jew maybe, but that's it. And Sylvia, who was there with me, is a Presbyterian. I mean, they the lawyers, it's better for you if you don't have a lawyer. They said all kinds of stuff to them. But yeah. Mohamedou is really smart, which is a benefit for him. He has a college degree in electrical engineering from college in Germany. And he speaks, at that time he spoke 4 languages, now speaks a couple more. He spoke English and Arabic, French and Arabic were his native languages from Mauritania. And then he learned German and English. He wrote the book in English, which was his 4th language. And he had lived in Germany and he'd lived in Canada. So it was just easier for him to process what was happening to him than, for example, my other client who's never lived anywhere except in Saudi, Yemen, Afghanistan, and Tajikistan, and the Emirates. I've been to the Emirates too, all the Emirates. And it's just harder, when they have no understanding of what's going on.
Yeah.
It's like the Palestinians who think every Jew is just like they are in Israel. How would they know any different?
Yeah. Where was he arrested and why was he arrested?
Mohamedou? He
Yeah.
was actually arrested. He was captured.
Captured.
He was captured in Mauritania. Mauritania, to anybody who doesn't know, is in West Africa, just north of Senegal, just more or less south of Morocco and west of Mali coast. And initially the U.S. thought that he had been involved with the Millennium Bomber. Do you remember 2000 in December? Everyone was afraid that the world was going to end January 1st, 2000.
Yeah.
And there was a guy who came across the border in Vancouver, Victoria, and an alert guard had him open his trunk, and it was full of explosives, and he was on his way to LAX. And that guy had been in Montreal, which is where Mohamedou was at the time, and had been at the same mosque. So everyone at that mosque became suspicious. And Mohamedou also has memorized the Quran, which is not that uncommon for young boys in Mauritania either. But he often led the service during Ramadan because he's the only one they had there who spoke French and Arabic and could, say the prayers. So they got suspicious of him. By this time, he had gone back to Mauritania because he'd been told his mother was sick, which wasn't really true. It turns out the U.S. had told his family they had to say that. And they were afraid. So that's how he ended up in Mauritania, and they were able to pick him up. And then they let him go, and then they picked him up again after 9/11, November, and told him, the officers there said, drive your own car, the Americans are back. And he said, I don't have anything to tell them. They said, yeah, we know, but they want to talk to you again. Just drive your own car to the police station because you'll be home in a couple hours. That car is still sitting there. I saw it in Mauritania. It is still sitting there. The wheels are gone, all
Yeah.
smushed. But it's still there in the parking lot, never moved. And he never went home after that. They
Wow.
sent him to Jordan for 8 months. The Jordanians said, this guy hasn't done anything. But then Jordan at that time was secret, and he had figured out where he was. So they didn't want him to go back, so nobody would know that the Americans were sending people to Jordan. So they sent him to Bagram Air Force Base in Afghanistan, and then after 2 weeks to Guantanamo. So he got to Guantanamo in August of 2002. And then after a while, the FBI said, the military says we're not making any headway with you. So they're taking over. And that's when the bad shit happened. All the bad stuff.
Yeah.
It's all in his book. I mean, his book is really a wonderful book. It's not a diatribe against the U.S. at all. The name of it's Guantanamo Diary. It's funny. He's a funny guy. It's philosophical. And at the very end, he says, I hope everyone that I've talked about believes I've been honest, and I hope that someday we can sit down together and have a cup of tea, because we've learned so much from each other. And he wrote it in 2005. I fought with them to get it out until 2012. It got published in 2015, and he didn't get out till 2016. But it's now in 27 languages.
Yeah.
And now the movie is going to be out in the fall.
Great.
And the documentary is about him and one of his guards, a guy named Steve Wood, and it's finished. The Guardian newspaper film people did it, and it should be, whenever they decide to release it, it'll get out. Steve was a kid from Oregon, a big white kid who joined the military because there was nothing else going on in his life, kind of, I think from a kind of alcoholic family. What do you do after high school when you don't know what you're going to do? You join the military, right? So he ends up in Guantanamo, and he and Mohamedou became very close friends. And he's been to visit him now 3 times in Guantanamo. And he's converted to Islam.
Okay.
Whatever kind of vaguely Christian he was, but very, very kind, sweet guy. And the documentary is called My Brother's Keeper, and it's about their relationship and how they both changed as a result of it. But he was his guard. Mohamedou had his own little guard force. They didn't trust him after they tortured him to be in the population because they didn't want him to tell everyone else. So he always had his own. He was in solitary all those years, and he had his own little guards, and they got to be friends.
Huh?
They watched The Big Lebowski over and over and over.
I do too.
Over.
Well, I just found something on your site actually that he wrote about you, and he said, Nancy fought for justice in a place that was designed to kill justice, and saved me from wrongfully spending the rest of my life in Guantanamo. Without her, I may never have seen my family again. And that's quite a statement by him,
We're very close. We're still close. I hadn't seen him for a couple years since I'd been last in Mauritania, and we both were in. He didn't get his passport. That was the other thing. He gets out, and then the U.S. tells Mauritania, well, don't give him a passport. And, the U.S. has enormous control all over the world. They may not like us, but, they stuck with us. And so finally he got his passport in October of last year. And he still hasn't been able, we haven't been able to get him a visa to Europe anywhere, or London. But he did get a visa to South Africa, to Cape Town, and that's where they did most of the filming, just because they make a lot of movies there. So he and I were there in January, and that was really fun. It was weird to see Guantanamo set, and Jody being me, and Tahar Rahim, who's Italian Mohamedou, being him. Tahar is a French actor. If you ever saw a movie called A Prophet, it's an old French movie. He's a terrific actor. And to see them, and Shailene Woodley, you know who she is, she plays my woman who was then my associate. And to see all them interacting, oh, the firecrackers just started. Seeing them interacting, it's weird. It's weird.
Yeah, I bet. You know, the NASO is planning on having a film festival. And this would love to be able to include this in the film festival, you know, and maybe, who knows, maybe we get you to come down and talk, you know.
Well, you know, if you ever want Mohamedou to come and talk to you, he'll Skype in and talk to you all.
Yeah, we'll do that.
He does it all the time. And he's really good, and he's really, I was in Sweden, and we had 700 lawyers, and he Skyped in, and he had already learned 2 sentences in Swedish to say to them. But he does it a lot. Does a lot of classes. He and I were just on a program for Amnesty in Norway, and he'd be a good speaker for you, for your group.
Yes, I'd love to. I would love to get him on this fireside chat sometime.
Yeah,
you know, to talk.
I would love it, and you would. You know, you can just pepper him with questions and he'll answer them all.
Yeah. Yeah, we got 1,000 of them. But
more for him.
Okay, I thought I would leave, you know, the next 10 minutes for questions or whatever. Generally lasts an hour, but certainly want to thank you for coming on, Nancy, and good seeing you again.
Seeing you, I'm so glad that you all are, you know, you're still organizing, still fighting the good fight. You know, we have a long way to go. Maybe we'll make some progress this time.
Oh, yeah. Well, we need to educate to organize, and that's what we try to do, you know.
That's right.
But let's open it up now to questions. Anybody have questions?
There's one down there, Reggie.
Hi, hi Nancy. Really enjoyed your talking with you here. You mentioned the CIA's apparent complete disregard of Geneva Conventions and their treatment of the prisoners at Guantanamo. And I've heard at least one person talking about how international conventions prohibit the use of tear gas in war. But they don't seem to have any problem with using that in our streets here in the country. Is there?
No, they're war.
I'm sorry?
It's a war crime.
It would be considered a war crime in an international tribunal, is that? But not in our system.
Well, it should be considered a war crime anywhere, because you know those treaties. The Geneva Convention applies to anyone, really. It should. I mean, it normally applies in a war situation, but I can't imagine why. You know, somebody should bring a case. They use it all the time.
So you think there is some legal potential there?
I don't know, but I've thought about it recently because I know that it's prohibited in wars. If it's prohibited in war, how can we use it on our streets?
Well, one would think.
One would think, right? But I don't know, and I haven't researched it at all. But the CIA really did most of their damage in other countries, which is where they held in the black sites. I mean, you can look up those cases. I just can't tell you the names of the countries. Brown, black, cobalt, violet. They all have they all have code names. But really horrendous, horrible things. Just, they said, well, in fact, who was the Attorney General who said the Geneva Conventions don't apply in Guantanamo, which of course was false.
Well, what happens if Trump decides to pull us out of the Geneva Convention?
It was passed by, it's a law now. I mean, treaties get passed by Congress and they're the law of the land.
So it's ratified by the Senate, et cetera, I guess. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it was ratified years ago.
So he couldn't do that.
And torture too was ratified with some reservations by the US, but nothing that would matter. No, he can't. They did manage to unsign the Rome Statute that created the International Criminal Court, but I don't know how they would unsign the Geneva Conventions. Every country in the world has signed the Geneva Convention.
But okay, well, thanks a lot. I mean, but I don't know where we would find someone to bring a case like that, but
oh, but
I'm
gonna. Now you've got me interested.
Oh, good.
I just don't know. In the Convention Against.
So in that case, right, of like a Geneva Convention thing on tear gas, like you couldn't even bring that up in an American court, right?
Well, I don't know. I'm going to look into it. I mean, the Geneva Convention, I don't believe, gives you a private right to sue. But I mean, I'm sure I can find out the answer to why they're allowed to use tear gas when it's prohibited in a war zone. I don't know.
That would be extremely interesting if you could get that
If I
clue back to us somehow.
We'll let you know what I find out.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Shouldn't be that hard.
When are you planning on coming back?
New Mexico? Is that
Or just on work?
back to New Mexico? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, August, the end of August.
Okay.
I have sentencing in Albuquerque on August 26th, federal court, so I have to be there.
Excellent. So I recently having worked with NASO and then moved out to Albuquerque, I have kind of joined up with the local DSA chapter here. And it looks like they've kind of stalled a little bit on their organizing efforts and on a few different paths. And so I would love to see if at some point, maybe after you get back into town, you'd be willing to maybe come and do a short chat similar to this for the DSA chapter that we have.
It's DSA?
Yes, ma'am.
It's Democratic Socialist.
Yeah.
Democratic Socialist, okay. Yeah.
Excellent.
Are you guys going to vote for Biden, or are they going to be snotty about it?
No, I think they're going to end up likely voting some sort of third-party option. The debate on the floor right now is whether or not to back a Green Party candidate. I don't believe any of them have any intention of supporting Joe Biden.
I know this has become a big issue. There was a letter from the old SDS people to the DSA about this is the year when we've got to all bite our tongues and.
Yeah.
I think the problem that, like, from what I understand with DSA, and at least like my view kind of on these organizing things, is 2016 was also the year that we had to bite our tongues. And I mean, more likely than not, 2020 or 2024 is also going to be the year that we have to bite our tongues and just do it. In 2028, we'll have to just suck it up and hold our nose. And the problem is it's always the worst. This is always the most important election of our time. And like convincing younger people that that's actually true when they've lived through so many bad elections. I don't know that line of reasoning is going to work on a younger generation.
I know. It's a problem.
Yeah.
You know, and you're right. I mean, voting for Hillary was something that I almost did not do because she's so bad. But we've never had I thought we would never have a president worse than Bush. And yet, on the other hand, Bush got us into 2 wars, got us Guantanamo, got us Syria, probably got us ISIS. And at least Trump hasn't gotten us into a war yet.
Yeah.
But
It is kind of a tough situation because depending on who you talk to, right? Like, you know, if you talk to someone like, say, Ellen Jemerson, whose primary focus is, you know, Mexican immigration rights and some of these things, I mean, she'll tell you that Donald Trump is 10 times better of a president than Barack Obama was in the case of things like deportations and the way that, you know, Mexican immigrants were treated. So it's, you know, the idea that like Joe Biden, who has come out and told us that the idea to deal with protests is more cops, shoot them in the leg instead of the chest. Some of these other kind of, in the old days, you would call them gaffes. But I mean, in the modern age, it's like what you're looking at is basically, yeah, the difference between being shot in the chest or shot in the leg as a presidential candidate. And I don't know. I don't know that we can.
Hard. It is hard. And that's a real conundrum, I think, for all of us. It's very difficult.
But I guess a quick question then for you is, what is your stance currently on the police abolition movement? And taking a step further from that, like, because you're so involved in justice and law, like things like prison abolition.
Well, you know, I probably will never get rid of prisons, but should we decarcerate enormous numbers of people? Yes. If we can use COVID to get people out and keep them out and have the people realize we don't have to incarcerate more people than any other country in the world. That's the start. There are a few, not very many people who actually need to be separated from society. You get rid of all the drug cases, right? That gets rid of a lot. All the property cases that are usually connected to the drug cases. Murders are usually a one-time thing. Somebody kills someone they are close to and would never kill again. Those people can be rehabilitated. The only people who really can't be rehabilitated are the ones who are completely nuts. And we don't know what to do with them. We just don't know. But that's a very small portion. On defunding the police, certainly we should. Somebody said something that I heard the other day. He said, well, we've already defunded healthcare. We've defunded education. Why can't we defund the police? And defunding and abolition are two different things, of course. If we live without any police force in this country? Probably not. But should the police be limited to police work and not mental health work and not drug addiction work and not settling domestic violence cases? You know, where they end up getting shot anyway, so they'd be better off not going in because they don't know how to deal with it. Not deal with teenagers who get, you know, who run away. I mean, any number of things. So if you shrank their budgets way, way down, and much as I'm generally in favor of unions, got rid of the police unions, which I don't call real unions, it would make a huge difference. It would but are we going to be able to abolish cops? I would love to have a society where we abolish them or only have female cops. Did anybody see the female cop who came down on the male guy the other day? He was beating up somebody, and she pushed him aside and starts railing. You know, if we just had female cops, we'd probably be better off.
Yeah, I mean, that's possible. Or what about then, like, if you go with that full, like, and you cut it down into what we would call, like, say, police work, right? I mean, how do you prevent them from, I guess, not just kind of re-becoming exactly what they are, given that in a lot of cases, police are only there to just generate money for the city or the state by basically targeting minorities for minor traffic violations or stupid things or things that don't matter at all, that have nothing to do with like safety or defense of anything or protection of stuff. And
that's a problem. I think that's a big problem. You know, why do cops have to be the ones who give out traffic tickets? I mean, somebody has to be there to make sure that the streets are safe, right? You know, but why can't that be the community? I mean, there's all kinds of alternatives to police work. So what do we need the police for? If someone's, I don't know. I mean, there's a few things, I suppose, that I would call the police for. I can't imagine quite what they would be. But there probably are some, but, it's like everything else. We've got to have protections against all of them. Can you hear the sounds back?
Yeah.
Yeah, those are the firecrackers.
Mm.
So here's an example. These firecrackers go off every goddamn night, starting about now till 3 in the morning. They keep everybody awake. A little kid got burned because one went right through the window and burned a kid yesterday. Someplace was on fire. They're dangerous. And everybody's dogs in this neighborhood are going ballistic. And nobody can sleep. There's a huge amount of complaints. And they say, complain to 311. Just call us and complain unless it's a dangerous situation. But firecrackers are illegal in this city. And so we don't want the SWAT teams to go into the projects, which is where they're coming from. Right north of me is a big housing project, and knock on every door, which is what they really want to do. And in fact, they would find them that way. They would solve that problem. But we don't want that. So what do we do?
So I've actually been following that story on Twitter, and there's some people on the ground who have run into kids that were shooting fireworks, like 10, 12-year-old kids who are out shooting some of those fireworks. And there were a couple of activists who had said, where did you get those? And basically a bunch of these kids are all getting them from the police. The cops are handing them out to small children to then take back to their families. And they're using it as a method to basically torture people in these neighborhoods to prevent them from potentially going out and protesting and joining in the George Floyd movements.
In New York?
Yes.
Really?
That's the current word on the street across most of Twitter and some other social media networks of activists on the ground.
These firecrackers are not kids. These are big, expensive fireworks.
Yeah, there's supposedly there's outside one of the police precincts. There is somebody handing them out the back door, basically of a police precinct, to people to go out, or cops are coming by shooting them and then getting out of Dodge ununiformed. There's a lot of different kind of lines going on that, but
I think that's rumor that may or may not. I mean, I wouldn't put much in place, but I lived in Chicago, so I know what the Foster area Avenue police did. Right, they ran all the fencing of everything out of their police station. But I don't think that's what this is. I think this is people who they've caught some people who are selling them. They had $6,000 or $7,000 worth of fireworks in somebody that they caught in Staten Island selling them. So they come in and they sell them, but the kids don't have that kind of money. So these are not teenagers, not the ones that I'm seeing. I mean, these are like the stuff at Macy's, Yeah. Not little Roman candles. These are big, huge things. And those are not coming from the cops. As I said, I wouldn't put anything past them, but I'd want a little proof.
Sure.
We get into trouble when we start doing what they do, and accusing them of things that they didn't even do yet. I mean, they might think of it if they watch it on Twitter, but they haven't done it yet.
That's fair.
I mean, it's like the TikTok kids who bought all the tickets, or to Trump. We all thought that was really great. But on the other hand, if you think about it, do we really want people using the internet to do fake stuff? Probably not. It's probably a good idea. I mean, that was really great, a great little prank. But this one is one that's made me really think. Who should be doing it? Or we can't have social workers out there. Nobody can tell where they're coming from. And
Yeah.
these projects are safe here now, by the way. I can walk right through that project in the middle of the night and nothing will happen to me. I'm a white girl. It's totally safe here.
Yeah.
Because I mean, they're literally 2 blocks away, and I walk through them all the time. I probably wouldn't walk by myself on any dark street because I have some martial arts training, and that's the first thing you're trained to do is not go down a dark alley by yourself, you know.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, that raises the question for me. What do we do?
Sure.
It's a danger.
Yeah, that's the hard part, right? Is trying to draw that line. I mean, I know for me, I'm a little bit more on the abolition side because I'm an anarchist myself, but you know, I do believe much more in like the community can handle it kind of mentality, especially living here in Albuquerque. And so you're super familiar with how bad Albuquerque police department is, right?
Well, and how dangerous Albuquerque is. You never know whether you're going to get shot by the robber or the cop.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, you know, it's either or if you're on that southwest side of the interchange, right? So,
yeah, I lived on downtown Albuquerque for years on 14th Street.
Okay, yeah.
I couldn't take my dog for a walk in the park because there were so many needles in the park. But so Albuquerque has its own problems, and everyone's armed. So, you know, if you live in Albuquerque and you don't have a gun, it's really a mistake. I mean, because everybody else has guns. So,
yeah.
But, you know, Albuquerque police are under federal consent decree. Did you know that? Because they killed many people.
And so so I don't know if you've heard about the recent situations, but they just finished that 6-year plan where they were under the DOJ and they had all these issues that they were supposed to have fixed. And this, just in the last 2 weeks alone, they've actually murdered 2 other teenagers in the middle of mental health crises.
Right.
So, I mean, it's,
well, and then
they learned nothing. They've learned absolutely nothing from.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then there's the guy who shot the protester.
Which we know that he's a member of a local, basically alt-right organization called the New Mexico Civil Guard.
Right.
Yeah.
And the police chief tried to say we don't cooperate with them, which is, of course, complete bullshit.
Yeah, they totally basically gave them free rein to go out to that protest and pretty much shoot protesters so long as, like, they kept it on the, you know, they made it look like they were being antagonized and defending themselves, right? And so that's what that guy was doing, is he was going out and antagonizing people. He ended up hitting 2 women, busted one lady's head into the ground, and so it was when he got hit in the face with a skateboard after that is when he pulled the gun and started shooting. So it was, I mean, that was all coordinated. It's, I got some friends in Las Cruces who've been watching them for months, you know, and their whole job is to just keep an eye on them because they're always up to no good. So it's,
It's a real problem.
Sure.
I think it's a real problem. You know, it's like the people who, the transparency people, like Chelsea and others, you know, that we should have no secrets. Well, I don't know that we should have no secrets. I think there are some secrets that a country has to have, frankly, in this world.
Sure, you don't want to be fully Machiavellian, but like at the same time, you know, you can't tell everybody everything all the time. That's just that's not reasonable, right? Yeah.
Not in a world that this world. Now, if we have a world without borders, so we wouldn't have refugees, and we didn't have police with guns anywhere, you know, we'd have a different situation.
Yeah, I think you're right. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you taking a few minutes to chat, and thank you so much for coming in.
Some more. I'm going to find out about the tear gas.
That sounds good, because they're using it a whole bunch here.
Yes, I know.
Yeah, you'll have plenty of people to talk to who will testify that they've been hit in the face with canisters and stuff. So
I'm one of them, and I recently. But
that's right.
Any other questions? Anybody?
Well, thank you, guys. Keep fighting.
Thank you, Nancy. We appreciate it so much.
Thank you, Nancy.
You know how to find me.
Thank you. Hi.
I'm
Yeah.
always easy to find. You've got my email address, or Hi does.
Yep. Yep.
I'll find
Thank
out
you so
about
much.
the tear gas.
Well, thank you so much, Nancy.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Good seeing you.
Keep fighting.
Yeah, we will. Thanks.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.